The Archdiocese of Chicago is a vibrant and diverse faith community. We celebrate our faith through worship, evangelization, and reaching out to the needy. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Good morning. Welcome to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750 AM. Also get us on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago, youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. And we are taping this on March 7th. The playback is now today on March 14th. And co-host with me, Mark Teresi, who is leading the 175th gathering at the cathedral, the 150th, and plus many other hats. So, morning, Mark. How are you?
Very good, very good. We had a good meeting this morning about the 175th. Everybody's getting excited.
Yeah, what amazes me is that to realize that we are getting very close to Holy Week and couple of weeks away from Easter Sunday, since the whole season of Lent has flown. And I always tell people, Lent means springtime,
right? New
beginnings. And Lent is a time of conversion, a time of change of heart, new beginnings, and let God surprise us. And we have a great program lined up all the way from California. We have Dr. Edward Gordon, writer, author, lecturer, great friend, very involved in the cathedral. He's written about 15 or 20 books, and his wife Elaine, along with Edward, incredibly involved at the Holy Name Cathedral for so many years. So I want to welcome in a very special way Dr. Edward Gordon, all the way from California with your sunny background there. How are you doing, Edward?
Well, I'm just trying to not get sunburned.
Lucky you.
Well,
I'm fine. Thank you for asking.
Ironically,
it's good to see both of you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
I know you're in springtime now in Chicago, right?
Almost.
Well, here's the thing. The month of February in Chicago set a record. It was the warmest February in the history of Chicago, averaged 39.5 degrees. March so far, or at least this is now March 7th as we're taping, has been more seasonal back in the 40s, but anybody who says this was a brutally tough winter in Chicago, no way.
No.
We had a few cold days, some snow in the suburbs, but an incredibly mild winter, one of the mildest I can ever remember. So we're going to do two halves of the program today, Edward. First half dealing with COVID, second half on the economy. And what is the latest statistics? What's the latest you have on this whole COVID situation as we speak?
Well, last year, another 100,000 Americans died from COVID. So we're up to 1.3 million deaths in the United States from COVID. Worldwide, it's around 5 million, but that's just an estimate because there are some countries like China and India where we just basically don't have accurate data.
So are you saying that last year in the United States in 2023, 100,000 Americans died from COVID?
Yes. And we're going to talk about that. But first, I really want to talk about long COVID, which I'm afraid 16 million Americans have long COVID right now.
Wow.
Out here where we're staying in Rancho Mirage, we have a couple next door to us from Calgary, and he was a lawyer. His wife is a doctor. He has long COVID, and he is suffering from brain fog and fatigue. Right now in the U.S., about $200 billion is being lost in wages, productivity, and medical costs because of long COVID. And a lot of people need to get the vaccine. I want to talk about that in a minute, to reduce the risk of brain fog. For sometimes I feel I have brain fog, particularly when I have to get up and do these programs at the crack of dawn. Even the ducks in the pond behind me are yawning.
We knew you'd get that in.
So what causes this long COVID? Some of it are lingering viral particles from COVID that have not actually been fully rectified by the vaccines. There are also changes in clogged blood vessels could cause long COVID. Previous infections that get reinfected can cause long COVID. And also a over or underactive immune system. All of these things we believe are what's at work in causing long COVID.
Now,
So-
as our listeners and viewers listen to that, what should they be looking for in terms of symptoms? And should they be heading to the doctor when they see these symptoms, or is it spend 5 days and everything's fine? What are you? I know you're not a doctor to prescribe,
No.
but
Right.
what are people looking for, and what should
Well,
they do?
They should go to the doctor because people that have long COVID are at increased risk for heart attacks, strokes, and diabetes. And there is a lot of research. In fact, at Northwestern University Hospital, right near where you're sitting, there is a whole unit doing research on long COVID. But I must tell you that the government is underfunding that research. And also the drug companies, because they don't know much about long COVID, have not yet developed any specific remedies for long COVID. Now they're using many different medicines they're trying out that already exist to see the impact of it. But again, remember something. When we talk about COVID, we're still talking about a disease that a few years ago did not exist. So more research needs to be done to determine the causes of long COVID and how best to treat it. I'm not saying people aren't trying to treat it, but thus far, we are only guessing at what causes long COVID and what to do about it.
Now, it's interesting, Edward, that if I'm not mistaken, here we are on March 14th. Things shut down 4 years ago tomorrow.
Yeah, wow.
I think it was March 15th, 2020. Churches closed down, schools closed down, parks closed down. We were literally told to stay home. So 4 years, I never would have dreamed when things shut down in March of 2020 that we'd be talking about COVID in March of 2024. But here's the other thing. I can name 4 or 5 people that I know very well that right now presently suffer from long COVID. And the number one symptom has been brain fog. Number 2 symptom, you just mentioned fatigue. Now, why do some people suffer long COVID and others get COVID, recover quickly, and life goes on like nothing happened?
The best answer I can give you at this time is it all deals with your immune systems.
Okay.
Why, within all of us are cancer cells. Our immune systems negate those cancer cells. Some people's immune systems don't. So what causes that? We don't know. We don't know. All right. Now, there are treatments, obviously, and there are now some tests that are being purported that can tell you what you're at greater risk for in terms of different diseases. But your immune system, first of all, our immune system is tremendous. Right now within our bodies, it's regulating all of our brain impulses, our blood flow, our digestion, our heart rate, our blood pressure, all of this. Think about it for a minute. And the immune system is regulating all of these things and protecting us from disease. Disease is all around us. I mean, microscopic particles cover our bodies. They're in our systems. And some of them are good and some of them are bad. So don't knock your immune system. And we have different ways of strengthening it. You know that. Diet, vitamins, regulating weight, stress, etc. All of these things help strengthen the ability of our body to fight off disease. All right. But people ask me, well, this is just terrible. Why haven't we come up with an answer? All these people have died. Well, remember this, the Spanish flu, and I remember, Father Greg, when you first asked me to research plagues, the Spanish flu, and compare it to COVID, I have been recently reading this book, which is a very interesting book about the great influenza epidemic of 1918. Now, remember, there was never a vaccine developed. I just told you how many people have died from COVID. The Spanish flu killed 50 to 100 million people worldwide. And 2/3 of those people died in the first 24 weeks of COVID in 1918. I want you to think about that for a minute. That's how potent that particular virus was.
And when you think about it, Edward, the world was much smaller in population. So to have lost 50 to 100 million people in 1918 to 1920, whatever that was, we were not dealing with as many people on the earth as we are today. So it knocked out a good part of the number of people on earth.
Yes. There was 1.8 billion people on earth at that time.
Wow.
So it just gives you an idea of how potent that was. Now, 8 to 10% of the people that died were young adults. There were no vaccines. And the COVID continued, the Spanish flu continued in 1919. It didn't die out really to 20 and 21 totally. So there have been other plagues, if you want. The Black Death killed 21 million people in the Middle Ages. 21 million people.
Wow.
And more recently, HIV, AIDS, killed 25 million people up to this point. And there are estimated 42 million people infected. Now that's that number 25 million is over 24 years that we've had the HIV infection. But currently they figure another 42 million have been infected by HIV.
So as you look at that 100,000 that have died since
last year,
yes,
what more can we do to protect ourselves?
I'm glad you asked me that question, because we still have far too many COVID-19 vaccine deniers.
Yeah.
Why do we have deniers? All right, let's go all the way back now before we had a vaccine. The first vaccines came out, and you heard people saying, "Oh, this is experimental. I don't want to take it," etc. All right. How many of your viewers regularly get a flu shot every year? And that shot is modified every year based on the latest strains of flu. Because a lot of Americans still die from the flu every year, particularly older Americans. People do get negative reactions to these vaccines. What's the statistics? 1 for every 500,000, 1 for every 100,000, 1 for every million. Different vaccines can cause difficulties, feeling tired the next day, etc. However, there is so many lies, and I'm using the term lies now because professionally I am fed up with the people telling me these tales that are not backed up by any reputable source that can be confirmed. In fact, multiple sources. The data I give you is data that I have gathered from several different sources that confirm the same information, or they're approximately the same, all right? The other day I was on a webinar with 2 individuals, I won't tell you who it was, and one of them said to me, 2 million people have died from taking the COVID-19 vaccines. Ladies and gentlemen, That is nothing but an outright lie.
Wow.
It is on social media now. Multiple sources have it. And I question the expertise of those sources.
Yeah.
Now, you're going to say to me, well, all experts are the same. No, they're not. The data I give you comes from sources where there are confirmed experts in medicine, experts in news and gathering information, and they report the same data or approximately the same data. I said that to these gentlemen and said, you are perpetrating propagandistic lies. So before you start reacting to bad news in social media or on television, I highly recommend that you subscribe to an edited news source that is reputable. You pick it. It will help to protect you from not only the lies of COVID, but from all the lies regarding the economy, politics, the reputations of various individuals who are famous. They are suddenly accused of wrongdoing.
Edward, real quick, Edward, before we go to break, and that is, when you told these two gentlemen that you are perpetrating lies, what was their response to you?
They said everyone was entitled to their opinion.
Whether it's factually based or not.
Take us to break, Mark.
We'll be back. WNDZ, 750 AM, Catholic Chicago, 312-255-8408. When we come back, we'll be with Dr. Edward Gordon, continue this. It's really a fascinating conversation. I'd call you an expert, lecturer, professor, statistician, a data examiner, fond of knowledge, and
a wonderful human being.
And a world traveler, too. So we'll be back in a few minutes. Please stay tuned.
I can't imagine myself going into any other school.
Our school fosters growth by being a backbone to our family.
My kids are incredibly well-rounded. I see a lot of kindness in them on a daily basis.
One of the things I think Catholic schools do well is personalize the learning experience. You can hear joy in the classrooms.
I feel that I'm happy that I am in this kind of school.
Our school communities provide students with academic excellence and character education in a supportive and stable learning environment. Come see for yourself. Visit archchicago.org/findaschool.
Catholic Charities has had the privilege of helping people in need in Cook and Lake County for more than 100 years. We would like to take this opportunity to thank our frontline workers who, despite the unprecedented challenges of the past 2 years, continue to excel at their jobs every day. From the warehouse staff members who pack boxes of nutritious foods for low-income seniors, to the dedicated WIC employees who have remained open for families with children under the age of 5, to our volunteers and restaurant partners who ensure that meals are available for those experiencing hunger, to our service coordinators and our professional counselors who continue their vital work in innovative ways, to our food pantry staff, and to all those who work at Catholic Charities Call Center, finding solutions for every person who reaches out to us for help. Charity is at the heart of all you do, and we salute you.
We're back, WNDZ, 750 AM, Catholic Chicago. You can go to youtube.com/Catholic Chicago with Dr. Edward Gordon having a fascinating conversation on the status of COVID at this point. Before the break, Edward, you were talking about the friends of yours who basically said everybody's entitled to their opinion. Take that statement and move it toward the idea of spreader events. Are they still happening? And are those people that are entitled to their opinions spreading the COVID virus?
Well, right now, the latest COVID shot, only 1 in 3 adults have had the latest vaccination shot.
Wow.
Now, those of you that have other medical conditions are at high risk of catching COVID, and you should get it, particularly if you're over 65 years of age. But you know, COVID thus far the vaccines have saved 3 million Americans from dying. I want you to think about that for a minute. And another 18 million Americans from having been hospitalized because they got those shots. So this is absolutely essential that you get the latest COVID shot.
Is there
the flu shot and the other shots? Go ahead.
Is there a statistic of how many folks are walking around without that? Because they become spreaders, don't they, in terms of events?
Right, correct. They could be, yes, that is true. I mean, people today many people, they go into the doctor and they get a flu shot or a pneumonia shot. And then the doctor says, when I want to give you the latest COVID shot, and they say, oh, no, well, I don't think I really need it.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I've had enough COVID in me. Well, why is that a false sense of security? The reason is COVID continues to mutate. The COVID virus continues to change. And since it started, I've had 7 shots. I have not gotten sick from any of those shots.
Right.
Maybe 1 or 2, I felt a little tired the next day, but that's about it. And that's true for most people that get the shots.
Mm-hmm.
But
the only reaction, I think I've had 6 or 7 shots. I lose track. The only reaction I had on the second shot the next day was I had a craving for Purina dog chow. Is that normal, Edward? No, I was like you. My arm was sore, but no big deal. Quick question, Edward, and that is, if 1 out of 3 have gotten the latest flu shot, that means 2/3 have not. Is there reasoning because I've already had enough shots, I haven't gotten COVID, it's not as bad as it used to be, or they're following all this fake news, or is it all the above?
All the above. And they also think that their immune system has built up enough COVID, vaccine that they don't need it. But remember, the vaccine fades over time. Also, too, we can't predict how strong your immune system is. And if you are a diabetic or have Parkinson's or other health issues, your immune system is weaker.
Right.
So the question is, why run the risk?
Mm-hmm.
And people will say, well, 2 million people have died from taking these shots. That is a lie. That is an outright lie.
Now, as we look at next steps for us, what can we continue to do to make sure we're protected?
Talk to everyone in your family, your friends, the people you work with, and try to convince them to get the COVID shot. Mm-hmm. That is probably the most important thing you can do. Now, if you have an immune difficulty and you're going into a situation where there are people that are not vaccinated and you have immunity problems, wear a mask. Mm-hmm. You know, when I visit the hospital, I wear a mask when I go in to bring communion to sick Catholics, because I don't want to inadvertently bring them any virus, any sort, since their immune systems are often poor. And I also don't want to run a risk if for some reason they have the COVID virus and they might give it to me. But again, I have the shot. But again, all of this is relative. How strong is my immune system today? As I age, my immune system isn't as strong as it was when I was 10 years younger.
Right.
So we're not cast iron steel, folks.
Yeah.
Immune systems vary.
You know,
So
Edward, I want
take
to say that there's
precautions.
two things. One is I've noticed fewer and fewer people at Holy Name Cathedral wearing masks.
Oh, right.
I mean, some do, most don't. When you and Elaine got on the plane back in January for California, were most of the people not wearing masks?
I don't think I saw anyone with maybe one or two on that plane coming out here. And those were mostly older people who are at greater risk. Remember, most of the deaths from COVID have been from people over the age of 65.
Right.
And,
before we go
when
to the break
we came out
here-
here on January 10th, that plane was filled with people over 65 clutching their golf clubs. I'm just kidding. No.
But now, the thing is, now, Edward, before we go to break to change the topic, and that is, just for a moment again, you had started earlier in the program talking about long COVID, which is incredibly real because, as I mentioned, I know 4 or 5 people right now who had COVID a year ago, a year and a half ago, 6 months ago, that still suffer from long COVID. And that is so scary because you wonder, is this ever going to come to an end? You know, when will I feel no fatigue? When will this brain fog go away? Because one particular person in particular, you know, she can be talking and all of a sudden she stops talking, gets into this brain fog, kind of forgets where she was. And this is a very intelligent, bright woman who stops mid-sentence, then picks it up again. She also suffered from imbalance and was also affecting her eyes. And so, you know, before we begin to bring this segment to a close, say something more about long COVID. I'm assuming much money is being thrown into research to come to some conclusions regarding long COVID.
Yes, but more money needs to be placed into research by the government and by the pharmaceutical companies. My best advice to people who have long COVID is consult with your doctor on a periodic basis in terms of what medicines he's having you take at the present to counteract some of these symptoms. But keep in touch with your doctor, and if you're not satisfied, then find another physician or enroll in one of these studies on long COVID at Northwestern. I've had some people go to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Out here, there is a branch of that clinic in Phoenix. There's another branch I know down in Florida. That is another possibility, depending on how severely the impact is upon your health. Ultimately, we will find more ideas of why people get long COVID and how to best treat it. So don't give up the ship.
And finally, when we take this break, we'll be coming back talking about the economy. But the image that you had given over the course of these programs is an inning. What inning are we in besides extra?
We're in the next season.
Oh,
Next
okay.
season, yeah.
Okay.
You know,
Okay, good.
I just noticed behind you, Edward, a polar bear walked by.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, Elaine was riding it. You remember seeing that too. She had a whip. She was hitting the polar bear. No, I'm just kidding.
WNDZ 750 AM, Catholic Chicago. You go to youtube.com/Catholic Chicago with Dr. Edward Gordon, who I would say expert, lecturer, professor, statistician, data examiner, font of knowledge, good guy overall. And when we come back, we're going to start to talk about our economy and Dr. Gordon's take on where are we with the economy. Father Greg Sakowicz, Mark Teresi will be back in a few minutes. Please stay tuned.
I am a seminarian.
The church needs compassionate and well-trained priests to help guide each of us through life.
What inspires me, what draws me always to the priesthood is continue to see priests be a beacon of hope for other people.
You can play a part in the education of these young men as they prepare for a life of service to others.
I want to be that beacon of hope too, and it sets my heart on fire.
To support our seminarians, make your gift at archchicago.org/seminarian fund or call 312-534-7959.
The cemetery ministry is a core ministry of our Catholic faith tied to the corporal works of mercy. It's comforting to know that our Catholic cemeteries are caring for the remains of our loved ones awaiting the resurrection. There are 44 Archdiocese of Chicago Catholic cemeteries willing to help you in your time of loss. Call 708-449-6100 or visit CatholicCemeteriesChicago.org. Catholic Cemeteries, serving the Catholic community since 1837.
You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Thanks for letting us be part of your morning. Now again, Catholic Chicago.
We're back at WNDZ 750 AM, Catholic Chicago. You go to youtube.com/Catholic Chicago with Father Greg Sakowicz, Mark Teresi. We're with Dr. Edward Gordon. This part of the show, we're going to be talking about the economy. Father Greg, you have a question about your vast investments and how they're doing.
Well, the first half hour we spent on COVID. And Dr. Edward Gordon, what is the state of the economy as we speak today?
Well, as a historic labor economist, I look at numbers from the past, the present, and I try to project into the future, as you well know, guys. Mm-hmm. We did that at the end of December. Well, right now, we've been adding many new jobs, or many jobs to the economy. Now, the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates to between 5 and 5.5% in order to reduce inflation, which we're all very aware of. Mm-hmm. The idea is that if you add 353,000 jobs, the economy is growing and inflation could increase. Well, I don't agree with that basic definition with the Federal Reserve, because many of those 353,000 jobs that were added recently were not new jobs. Mm-hmm. They were replacing people who have left the workforce. This year, more baby boomers will retire than ever. 73 million baby boomers have retired by 2031 since 2010, and the majority in this decade.
Wow.
Right now, and that's a lot of people, isn't it? That's leaving the workforce.
Now along those lines, as we talk about the inflation, I've had more and more people lately say to me, Greg, when I go shopping for groceries, for other items, it has gone up so much, even a head of lettuce, a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread. We're talking about simple items, staples. They said it's incredible how much it's gone up. And so that has to be affecting people, because you've got to put bread and butter on the table. Therefore, now there's less money to go to a show, less money to kick in the economy in other areas, because you're doing it just to pay the rent. Mm-hmm. And it's, and then these people are not making this up, but they pay their bill and say, I could not have spent that much on these few items.
Why is that happening? One of the underlying reasons that is not properly discussed is the fact that 75% of businesses in America cannot find skilled workers, and we have anywhere from 9 to 12 million jobs vacant right now. Companies are raising wages in order to attract educated, skilled people. A good example of this is if you go to an emergency room, you may sit there for 7 or 8 hours before
Easy.
someone sees you.
Yep.
Has that happened to either of you guys?
Greg, it did. I was with him when it happened.
10 hours. And the
Yeah.
place was absolutely packed. It was empty. They were in the hallway. It was unbelievable. And they were working hard as they could. But I
Yep.
thought, they are so understaffed.
And then when you got a room, you were still waiting.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. So they did a great job. But this was a couple of years ago. But it was incredible. And they're working their tails off. And the harder they work, the further they're getting behind.
That is because there are more older people, and that number is going to continue to skyrocket, who are getting sick. And we are short 1 million doctors and 1 million nurses.
Oh.
We're short lab technicians, radiologists, and on and on. There are
Edward,
huge
right there.
numbers of healthcare, and many have retired. So
Yes.
many people in healthcare have left healthcare.
So are you saying to our listeners that now compared to 10 years ago, there are 1 million fewer doctors to call upon, 1 million fewer nurses in the various hospitals across the country?
Okay, there are 500,000 doctors we're short.
Well, that's
and
a
1 million
heck of a
nurses,
lot.
Okay, it's a lot.
500,000.
Right. And the reason for it is an unprecedented number of people have left the workforce, and young people entering the workforce it's growing at a rate of 0.2%. Remember, we baby boomers, and we're all baby boomers. Remember when we were in grammar school, there were 4 or 5 first grade rooms
Sure.
jammed with children.
Yes.
Okay. Well, all of those kids are retiring now. And many of them were doctors, or they were aerospace technicians that built Boeing airplanes, or they were plumbers to come and fix your house, your plumbing in your house, or they were chefs in restaurants, and on we go. We have an unprecedented number of vacant jobs across the economy, and we have a huge shortage of skilled workers in every business sector. CPAs, radiologists, doctors, nurses, math teachers, and on it goes.
And that's an area of deep research for you. I remember from previous programs, one short vignette, because I know this is a very serious topic, but I have to share this, and then I have a question. So the vignette is when Father Greg was in the emergency room. We had occasion to be sitting there for a while, and this older lady who had wheeled her husband into the emergency room sees Father Greg. She comes over to Father Greg and I've seen you at the Mass on TV, and she went on and on and on, and the nurse finally from admissions called, excuse me, ma'am, your husband is ready to be admitted. And she was totally enamored with Father Greg. But anyway, that's not my question. My question is, Ed, what's your opinion of the impact of COVID, stay-at-home workers? And I know for a fact in my family, a few of my sons, one went right back to work, one was lamenting the fact he had to go back to the office. Where are you on that in terms of the workforce and the impact that has? Or
it's made a bad situation worse. This problem has been building throughout the last 20 years, even before that.
Wow.
All right? Mm-hmm. The overall situation and research we published in Future Jobs, which won a National Book Award, and gives you a background on why this problem started and the solutions to it. And for COVID, we wrote this white paper with the impact of COVID, which made the situation worse worldwide. So this is not just a problem in the United States, it's a problem across the entire world. And we're paying the price for it now.
Now add the add the overlay of your observation about how the education system and the training piece is part of the issue here.
We are treating our education and training systems across the U.S. are seriously out of date. We are acting as if the economy was 1970, where we had a lot of basic jobs that required lower levels of education, meaning you could graduate from high school and read at the 8th grade level. And in 1970, there were plenty of people that were at that level. That's not true anymore. 75% of all the jobs that this economy has by 2031 will require some form of post-secondary career education, a certificate, a 2-year degree or whatever. And we only have a third of the students today successfully graduating from high school and then getting through those programs. Many start and drop out because their reading skills are too low, their math skills are too poor, they can't write, they can't think, and they've never learned how to learn during elementary and high school.
Well, when we come back, we're going to take a little break. That's
great note to stop on.
Yeah, it's such an important issue. And then maybe when we come back, talk a little bit about your observation in terms of our teachers and what are our expectations of students and how does the workforce connect with the education system. We'll be back in a few minutes. WNDZ, 7:50 a.m., Catholic Chicago. You can go to youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Father Greg Sakowicz, Mark Teresi with Dr. Edward Gordon. We'll be back in a few minutes. Please stay tuned.
Welcome back.
Es fabuloso verlos.
Dobrze jest znowu być razem.
It's good to be together again.
After so many months apart, pandemic capacity limits have been lifted, and we want to welcome everyone back to church. We can all pray together again. And listen as our choirs lift their voices in song.
We've been together in spirit.
And now, when you are ready, our doors are open wide.
Nuestras puertas están abiertas de par en par.
Nasze drzwi są otwarte.
And we're here to welcome you back to Catholic Mass.
Do you have an old bicycle that's not being used? Consider donating it to Catholic Charities Veterans Bike Project of Lake County. Skilled volunteers are refurbishing bicycles to make them safe and ready to be used by veterans to get to and from their new places of work. We also gratefully accept financial contributions that are used to purchase bike helmets and other safety accessories. Our veterans have faithfully served the United States, and now it is our privilege to serve them. For more information on the Veterans Bike Project of Lake County, call 847-782-4219. That's 847-782-4219.
We're back, WNDZ, 750 AM, Catholic Chicago. Father Greg Sakowicz, Mark Teresi here. You can go to youtube.com/Catholic Chicago with Dr. Edward Gordon. By the way, first of all, Edward, thank you for joining us. We said off camera how informative and really brilliant you are in terms of the information you're sharing. And just so you maybe know this already, but because you know statistics, but 3,000 to 4,000 folks have hits on listening to you.
Video shorts.
And I just heard there's a group starting called Gordon Groupies, and they'll wear buttons that say Gordon, Dr. Edward Gordon, I'm a groupie.
They're Gordon Deadheads.
No, I said groupies, not deadheads. But anyway, to get back to our serious topic, to talk a little bit about, as we look at the teaching profession and what is being taught, how is that connecting or not connecting to what the needs are in the job market?
Everyone looks for the reason why more students aren't better educated. What we're talking about is a need for a systemic improvement. It's not one component. Parents, teachers, school systems, higher education, and business are all in the knowledge game and needs to sustain it. I'll give you a story that illustrates my point. Right now in Detroit, I just was reading about a Ford plant where the workers the plant's going to convert from electric vehicles, from gas piston vehicles to electric vehicles. And the workers are up in arms because there are workers there that make drive shafts and other components of a gasoline car, and they now fear they will lose their jobs because it'll take fewer workers to make those cars. All right. Across in the same city, across the street from another Ford plant, is a community college, and they have a educational program to take auto technicians that build cars and teach them how to build electric vehicles, EVs. And those programs are largely paid for by the government or by the car manufacturers. So there's basically no cost. The question is, why don't more of the current Ford workers in that plant, why aren't they enrolling in those programs? Because there are shortages of electric vehicle workers to build those cars. All right? Well, the question is, of course, if that's true, does Ford give workers some time off to enroll in those programs? Does Ford subsidize those programs? Maybe they do. I don't know. But they should, because that's obviously the trend in which we're going toward. The other thing is, do the elementary and secondary schools in Detroit teach enough reading and math and writing skills so that they can enroll in a class, take notes, read the materials, do the mathematics, and actually successfully complete a training program on electric vehicles? Or they can't comprehend the vocabulary words. They can't do the math. They can't do problem solving that's needed to be an electric vehicle technician. Also, too, have we attracted more young people into education, or do we have this feeling that teachers are just failed used car salesmen and that it's no longer an honorable profession? And do we pay teachers enough to stay in that profession, or do we nickel and dime education to death so we don't keep the best and brightest teaching math and science and history and reading and writing? And finally, how important is education in the home of that kid? Do the parents encourage the kid to study more, or do they say, oh, homework, you don't need homework. You need to get out there and play football, baseball, basketball, keep your Facebook page up, here's more video games. How important is education? It's not a question that every kid's gonna be a professor or write books or do that. It's a question of knowledge. And this is a knowledge economy now. This is not 1970. This is 2024. So I ask these questions to parents, to school systems, to employers, to higher education. And what about our politicians? Do we encourage education? Do we encourage investment in knowledge for all our children, whether they're in public school, Catholic school, Jewish schools, private schools? Right now, too few graduate from high school reading at the 12th grade level of reading comprehension. And we need many, many more to be able to do that,
Now,
to build
Edward,
a good middle class career.
You are amazing. It just comes off your lips. First of all, you are brilliant. You are so well read. You thirst and hunger for knowledge. And your statements the last couple of minutes have been just profound. And it's interesting you said before, we live in a society today, you just look at how a football player, a baseball player, a basketball player, millions of dollars, headlines, incredible salaries.
And idolized.
And teachers, oh, you're only a teacher. You're only a professor. There's a language we use in our society that does not promote education the way it should be promoted. Now, when you talked about a shortage of so many people in the workforce, are there any areas right now in education where there's a surplus of workers? For example, are too many getting into technology? Certainly not enough doctors, not enough nurses. Is there any area right now that's being flooded where people are told to back out of that area because, quote, it'll give you a lot of money?
It's not that simple. I have researched communities where business, nonprofits, school systems, parent groups collaborate and work together to improve the system. Now, in Santa Ana, California, there is a group called High School Inc. They started in 1998 to attempt to improve the education levels of students in Santa Ana, California, near Disneyland. Why? Because this is a manufacturing hub, and not enough students were going into high-tech manufacturing, plus other areas too, like health, etc. They set up Career Academy high schools, and businesses financially support these career academies, as well as now they're working with elementary schools to make sure that as children graduate from 8th grade, they read at the 8th grade level, and that parents understand what jobs are out there and why the student needs a good, strong, basic liberal arts, career-focused education. So when they graduate, they can complete that training in a post-secondary. So this is a systemic approach. I call them regional talent innovation networks. So these are collaborations in communities between business and local communities.
So quickly, because I'm sure Father Greg will wrap it up, but I have another question. So you're a researcher. There's a discipline to that. There's a reading discipline. There's a writing discipline. There's an oral communications discipline. There's a synthesizing of ideas to come to new direction. And our kids go on Google and say they've done research.
They look it up.
What's missing? Or maybe as we wrap this up, and Father Greg will do that, but how do those disciplines come back in terms of really seriously understanding why you're making decisions, why you're voting making decisions, why your job search you're making decisions, why you're living your life making decisions? How does that work?
In elementary and secondary school, children learn how to learn, and to varying degrees, they develop all of the skills you just enumerated. Now, some are better at it than others, but since 66% of all children everywhere in the world have at least average intelligence, and another 13% are above average, there's no reason why more students cannot graduate from high school with having mastered to some degree those skills and therefore be eligible for the jobs of the fourth industrial revolution. That's what we're in now. And it's done gradually in elementary and high school. You learn all this information. You learn how to become an efficient learner on your own. And when you go into higher ed, then you can begin to apply those general skills into particular areas that interest you and where you have a higher level of aptitude. Some people will be carpenters. Some people will be brain surgeons. Some people will be accountants.
Edward, I need to run because we're literally out of time. We could listen for another hour, but
Yes,
great
thank you.
answer.
Yeah.
I want to thank in a very special way Dr. Edward Gordon for a profound hour. Edward, you're incredible. Thank you. Special thanks to
You're welcome.
co-host Mark Teresi, our producer engineers, Michael May, Clinton Cantrell. Thank you very much to all. God bless and continued blessings this Lenten journey.
Join us every Monday through Friday at this time for Catholic Chicago. You can stream our programs live or listen to past programs by visiting our website, archchicago.org, and clicking on Radio TV. And please connect with Catholic Chicago on social media.